The general in charge of the fight against ISIS is stepping down from his post. The news comes just days after a disastrous congressional hearing that revealed that the fight against ISIS isn't going as well as the administration reported. Joining us now is CBN News terrorism analyst Erick Stakelbeck. Erick, retired Marine General John Allen was only in the post for less than a year. Why is he quitting so soon?
Well, Charlene, basically this so-called war against ISIS is really going nowhere. What we've seen, number one, is the Obama administration carrying out limited pinprick strikes against ISIS positions in Iraq and Syria that shockingly are having an effect, by the way, Charlene, but they're not following up. There should be a steady air campaign by the United States-led coalition. It's just not happening. ISIS has lost ground in some areas, but they've gained ground in some areas. Charlene, they still control Mosul, which is the second largest city in Iraq. They still control Ramadi, which is a major city in Iraq. They cover 36,000 square miles of territory across Iraq and Syria. That's an area the size of Great Britain. That is astounding. We have not pushed back ISIS or made any sort of major dent in this movement since the air campaign began last fall. It's just a fact, and I think the general felt great frustration with the fact that it looks like President Obama just wants to manage this ISIS crisis until he leaves office. No, he's not seeking a decisive victory against ISIS or to defeat ISIS, which needs to be done. They need to be crushed, Charlene. He's just looking to manage this thing and leave it for the next president when he leaves office. I think that is pretty apparent, and I think the general got the memo.
General Lloyd testified last week that our program to train so-called Syrian rebels had resulted in no more than 4 or 5 fighters. This is embarrassing. What's going on here?
It's extremely embarrassing. Charlene, look, we're spending tens of millions of dollars to train these Syrian rebels, and only 4 or 5 have taken up arms against ISIS. I think, number one of the problems here is that these Syrian rebel groups, Charlene, yeah, they want to fight ISIS, but they also want to fight the regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Look, he's the guy, in addition to ISIS, who is killing their family members, their friends, their countrymen. But the U.S. has said, hey, you can't fight Assad. We're only fighting ISIS and jihadist groups. So I think that's one issue here. I think another issue is just incompetence in general. And this goes back, Charlene, to Iraq, where we spent billions to train Iraqi security forces and the Iraqi military. And what have we seen? We've had several instances where Iraqi troops have literally dropped their weapons in the face of the ISIS advance, ran the other way, and then ISIS scoops up those U.S. supplied military hardware. So we have not had much luck, to say the least, in Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan, by the way, in training the indigenous people to fight against the jihadists. And we're spending a lot of money, and in some cases, it's costing U.S. lives.
Well, Erick, it now appears that the investigation into the ISIS intelligence scandal is expanding. There are now multiple investigations looking into whether U.S. CENTCOM altered intelligence assessments of the war against ISIS. What can you tell us about this?
This is a big deal. And to me, this is a brewing scandal, Charlene, where if you had the Obama administration literally kind of cooking the books or cooking intelligence, so to speak, and giving this rosy portrayal of how the war, the so-called war against ISIS is going, this is a big deal, and it is scandalous. Basically, what we are hearing here is that the Obama administration was telling military officials, folks at the Pentagon, look, basically, tell the American people, tell Congress in your reporting on it, in your analysis of the ISIS conflict, tell them it's going well, that we're making big gains, that things are on the upswing, and that we have the upper hand here. Well, with the retirement of General Allen, for instance, the other day, Charlene, which we discussed, and just the facts on the ground, the fact that ISIS is still beheading people, enslaving people, conquering new territories, controlling massive areas of Iraq and Syria, including large cities, doesn't seem too rosy to me. So if the Obama administration was intentionally misleading here, I think it's scandalous, number one, Charlene. And unfortunately, this fits with the pattern with this administration of kind of covering up the facts in terms of the war against jihad. Look no further than Benghazi, for instance. So it's a troubling pattern.
Indeed. Erick Stakelbeck, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Charlene.